Hello everyone. On this video we will be looking at pie charts, bar graphs, and line graphs, which is really just a way to sort of organize like certain numerical values with certain other areas. Okay, so for example, we have this pie chart that shows the expenses for a small business for 1 year. Okay, here you see supplies, 11,456. You have postage, which is blue, for 3,792. You have the telephone, which is 3,652. You have all other expenses, which is 8,496. You have rent and utilities for 7,499. You have car expenses, which is 3,205. And you have your salaries, which is 20,761. All right, so let's say, for example, to the nearest $100, how much was spent on postage and supplies? All right, so I'm going to roll this up a little bit. Okay, so to solve that one, you want to know the postage plus the supplies. Okay, so postage, you see here, is 3,792. And supplies, 11,456. Okay, so that, if you add those two together, is 15,248. But remember, they want it rounded to the nearest $100. So that will be $15,200 rounded. All right, so what if we go up to problem B? Say to the nearest $100, find the total amount spent on rent, utilities, and car expenses. So I want you to press pause and do this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you have pressed pause and worked this one out. So if we go ahead and solve this one, you have rent and utilities plus car expenses. Okay, so go ahead and separate that. Okay, so we see that our rent and utilities is 7,499 plus our car expenses, which is 3,205. Okay, so you add those two together, you get 10,704. Well, we want to round it to the nearest 100, so that makes it $10,700 when rounded to the nearest $100. All right, so scrolling up to the nearest $1,000, how much was spent on items other than salaries, rent, and utilities? Okay, so I want you to do this one. So if you're still writing down that question, feel free to pause it, but I'm going to go ahead and move it back up so you can actually see the graph. All right, so go ahead and press pause and try to solve this one on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it and worked this one out. So let's go ahead and verify. So if you notice, you have your everything other than salaries, rent, and utilities. So that means you're going to look at car expenses, plus supplies, plus postage, plus phone, plus your other expenses. Okay, so that's everything other than salaries, rent, and utilities. Okay, so we know that our car expenses is $3,205, plus your supplies is $11,456, plus your postage, which is $3,792, plus your phone, which is $3,652, plus your other expenses, which goes for $8,496. Okay, so if you add all of those together, you end up with $30,610 or $31,000 when you round your answer. Okay, so if you are still writing this, feel free to press pause and finish up, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, so for this one, this pie chart shows how a person earning $36,913 a year spends their money. Okay, so you see they have their food for $5,296, their house payments for $10,200, your taxes, which is $6,137, you have miscellaneous, $6,142, your entertainment for $2,142, your car expenses for $4,847, your savings, which is $2,149, and I don't know if I did food yet, but food is $5,296. Okay, so what I want you to do is press pause and find out to the nearest $100 what is the total amount spent on food and entertainment, and to the nearest $1,000 how much of the income on items other than taxes and savings is spent. Okay, so go ahead and press pause and try to do these two on your own. Alright, so I'm assuming you've paused it and worked it out. So let's go ahead and verify. Okay, so you have your food plus your entertainment. Okay, so your food's $5,296 plus your entertainment, just $2,142. Okay, you add those two together, you get $7,438, but they want it rounded to the nearest 100, so that would give you $7,400 for your rounded answer. Okay, so for B, you have to the nearest $1,000, how much of the income is spent on items other than tax and savings. So you get taxes and savings, you kind of ignore those and you add in everything else. Oops, there we go. Okay, so that means you have your house payment, plus your food, plus your car expenses, plus entertainment, plus your miscellaneous. Okay, so that's everything other than taxes and savings. Okay, so for your house payment, that's $10,200 plus your food, $5,296 plus car expenses, $4,847 plus entertainment, which is $2,142 plus miscellaneous, which is $6,142. Okay, so if you add all those together, you get $28,627. But they want it rounded to the nearest thousand. So rounded to the nearest thousand is $29,000 rounded. All right. So again, if you are still writing this, feel free to pause it. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example, which covers bar graphs. Okay, so bar graphs read pretty much just like the pie chart. Okay, so if you wanted to use the graph below, how many milligrams of caffeine are consumed in one serving of instant coffee? Okay, so remember, this is your instant coffee here, and these are the milligrams of caffeine. Okay, so I want you to, well, you don't really have to press pause. It only takes a couple seconds to look and see that one, but I want you to press pause and try to solve this one on your own. All right, so assuming you have paused it, and you see your instant coffee, goes up to the 70 on the bar, plus it's marked 70. But in a lot of cases, they won't have the 70 right here. So you have to just look to the left to see exactly where the top of the bar graph for instant coffee is. Okay, so you see that tops off at 70. Okay, so you see there the instant coffee bar stops at 70 milligrams. Okay, so that's how much caffeine you have in one serving of instant coffee. All right, so if you are still writing, again, feel free to press pause. Now we're going to look at line graphs. Okay, so let's say if you have a line graph below that shows the relationship between time spent smoking a cigarette and pulse rate. Okay, so what is the pulse rate 15 minutes after a cigarette is lit? Okay, so you see here, just like with the bar graph, you look for your 15 minutes, which is right here. And then you go up and see how high that goes on the graph. Okay, so since this is right here, this goes up to 80. Okay, so at 15 minutes, the pulse rate is 80 beats per minute. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and screw this up. What I want you to do is, let me see if I can get both of these on the screen at once. There we go. Is I want you to press pause and see on this line graph when the pulse rate is the lowest and when the pulse rate shows the greatest change. All right, so I'm assuming you've paused it and solved those two. So for B, you can see the pulse rate is lowest right here at the beginning. Everything else is higher than that. So this is the lowest pulse rate, and that is at -5. Okay, so what does that mean? That means 5 minutes before you light a cigarette. So this is 5 minutes before you light a cigarette. This is when you light the cigarette. This is 5 minutes after, 10 after, 15 after, 20 after. Okay, so that means 5 minutes before, not you, but before lighting a cigarette. Okay, so now we want to know, when does the pulse rate show the greatest change? Okay, so really that just means the biggest jump or fall. So we see here, this fell a little bit, this fell a little, that rose a little bit, that fell, that fell, that fell, that fell. But you see the biggest jump is when you first light it at t equals 0 minutes and that 5 minute mark. Okay, so that's when the biggest change happens. Okay, so the greatest change happens between t equals 0 minutes and, there we go, t equals 5 minutes. Okay, so you won't always be asked, when does something appear? Or, you know, they won't all look like problem A. Sometimes you will have to just look at the line graph or bar graph to solve other types of problems. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's very, very complicated to do those. So hopefully this made sense, and I will see you on the next video.